Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. So today we're going to be doing something a little different here on the show. It is a best of for Arn. So we're going to hit some of the highlights of what I believe to be the best kept secret in wrestling podcasting. You know, the show has gained a lot of momentum in recent weeks, but we want to go back and bring some folks up to speed. So if you're a big time fan of the podcast, share this episode with the wrestling fan in your life. And I think we're going to have a new subscriber. It's the easiest and cheapest and fastest way to support the show. Just hit that subscribe button and do it in two places. Do it not only on your podcast app, but do it on our YouTube as well. Just go to Arn Show on YouTube.com, click that subscribe button. And next week, we're going to make it up to you. We're bringing you Super Brawl 2. Of course, that's coming your way. Mark your calendar right now. It's going to happen on the 11th. And then on the 18th, Elimination Chamber 2018. And that's going to be new for me, man. We've never done something that was just 2 years old. But Arn was there, and a lot of people remember 2018, and you know what we're talking about. So we're going to examine it in long form on the 18th. But today, let's tell a friend about your very favorite new podcast, Arn, here on Westwood One.
Hey friends, Tony Schiavone here, and welcome to the Best of Arn. Conrad, it appears, has been lost to the dangers of Las Vegas. And while Conrad and his friends are reenacting the hangover, your good friend, Tony Schiavone, will be your host for the Best of Arn right here on Westwood One.
So we're several months in. At this point, are you starting to settle in to your tag team and your partnership and your just real life relationship with Ole?
Yeah, I tell you, you can back up. I told a story early on in our podcast deal about what ifs and Matt Bourne getting fired, and had he not gotten fired, Ole might not have went out and researched and found the Road Warriors at that time. And that was one of those questions where you went, wow, what if? There was a what if here, and going to, just because of the relevancy of, we're talking about Greensboro and we're talking about Starrcade. The very first, I hadn't been to working for Crockett very long, and I can't remember, but it wasn't very long, and I was on that was actually my first Greensboro house show. But it was pretty full, and it was a lot of money. I want to say it was 300 plus grand. Hadn't been there that long, hadn't really got this was pre-Horseman, pre-all that. And I want to say it was probably maybe a month to 6 weeks after I'd been there. But I got my payoff for that show. And I usually don't discuss money because of the irrelevancy of what it was a long time ago. But this is one of those what ifs. My last week wrestling for Bob Armstrong and the Fullers, there was two ways you could go in those days. A promoter would do when you were leaving, when you had put your notice in. They would either screw you on the way out because they had 2 weeks of your money backed up. You didn't get paid for 2 weeks. So after you left, you got like 2 checks. Or the ones that wanted to leave a favorable impression, like the Fullers and Bob Armstrong, would give you a really good payoff on the way out. So had the best payoff of the entire 14 months that I'd had in Pensacola was my last check. So they left a huge positive feel good, about their company. Well, I get my check and I'm looking at this and it was less than my last week for the Fullers. And I go, this can't be right. There's no way this can be right. So I went into Jim Crockett, which I had never done. And, after I'd been in the business a little longer and had a family to worry about, let's just say my balls shrunk up a little bit. But I had a set at that point in time, and I went in and went, hey, this is ridiculous. That Greensboro show was $300-something thousand. What kind of payoff is this? Oh, well, Arn, you're not positioned where we want you yet. We have big plans for you and all that. I said, listen, if you got big plans for me, which you just said, pay me like a guy that you got plans for. Well, in that position, I think I was second match of the night, maybe wrestling Sam Houston or something like that. He said, well, that's what that pays in that slot. I said, let me ask you something. If I was Blackjack Mulligan and walked in here, would you say that to him if you had him in the second match? Well, Jimmy got flustered. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I'll just go call Bob and I'll just go back to Pensacola. Because at that point in time, we were driving a bunch and I've been on some really bad houses. So wasn't in the best of moods. And we finally get some light at the end of the tunnel. You got a huge house out here. And I'll just go ahead and tell you, it was a $700 payoff. That may sound like a lot of money back then, but not for the conversation I'd had with Dusty and Jimmy Crockett and where we were heading and all these different things and all the miles I was putting in and having rotten. I get it. When you got a rotten house, you got a $9,000 house, you got to get paid on that. It's not very good. So that's another one of those that had that conversation have went any further south, I was prepared just to go pack my car up and head back to Pensacola, give Bob a call and say, hey, can you take me back? And I'm sure he would have. And I actually called him and he said, well, sure, but you ought to give him a chance. He gave me some good advice and, but if not, if you need a place, you've always got a place here. This is a long story short, but it was one of those what ifs that had I left, not being there to be part of that group and name them, you might not have had a 4 horsemen. Food for thought.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's certainly a story I'd never heard. I don't think you've probably ever even told that story publicly, have you?
Well, I never discussed payoffs, and it's none of my business what anybody else makes.
Right.
I never asked. Nobody ever asked me. You just don't do that in this business. It's just not in good taste. But I thought the relevancy of where it started with Jim Crockett and where it ended and the evolution of all that was, for me, that was as important as being on Starrcade. How did I get there? And what did I have to do to qualify myself to be in a feature spot on future Starrcades? And I just thought it was part of the story. So I know it was long-winded. I apologize to the listening audience and apologize to you.
No, not at all. Listen, that's what we're here for, man. We want your stories and nobody's giving us that type of insight but you. I mean, I got to know though, did he make it right?
He did not make it right. It stuck, but what I saw was a gradual escalation in my opponents, and I saw a gradual escalation in my payoffs. Because in those days, you would have normally just, gotten fired. Jimmy Crockett would have just said, oh, that doesn't work for you. Well, how does this work for you? You finish up tonight. Could have very easily went that way, one way or the other. He had all the power, not me. The difference was I was 25, 26 years old. Whatever I was, I didn't have any wife. I didn't have any kids, and I didn't give a shit. There was probably 15 places to work at that time. and I was gun ho, and I got to a big territory after. Now I had worked for Watts, I had worked for Ole, I had worked for Continental, and I had some seasoning behind myself. I was confident in my promos. I was confident in my ability to work at that time, 3 years in or whatever I was. And it takes a little longer than that, but you couldn't tell me that at the time. I thought I had her down, and I did have it down enough to at least bluff my way through a conversation with Jimmy Crockett at that time. So, I was, and I think he sensed that. Because there wasn't any poor, pitiful me. It was, hey, this is bullshit. I heard what the house was. I know enough about the business now that it warrants a little bigger payoff than what I got, but he did not make it right. So there's another time it wasn't made right.
Talk to me a little bit about Ole's position within the organization. I think a lot of our listeners sometimes confuse Georgia Championship Wrestling and Jim Crockett Promotions because they were both on TBS. Talk to us a little bit about what Ole's position was within the company.
Well, they went to Ole and, they said, this was all a shoot. We got a kid down here, he's in Anderson. Apparently we got a little bit of the background on that. We understand you gave him his name and all that. Well, Ole didn't even remember that. Ole owned Georgia Championship Wrestling, which he purchased from Jim Barnett. So his last history in the business was being the boss, being the booker, being a top guy, and all that entails as far as payoffs and financial reward and all those things. So they said, hey, you might want to watch the show. Because he had removed himself from the business entirely, but that kid that you gave a name to, and Ole will tell you the story. Hey, I don't even remember that. Well, let's see. So he watched the show and he went, damn, that kid's gotten a lot better apparently, because, I didn't remember him, but there's some potential there. And they said, would you like to come back and work some? Well, Ole was holding all the cards. Ole's a wealthy man. He was definitely wealthy at that time. And, they were asking him. He didn't need them. They needed him. And would you be interested in doing some tags? So he agreed to it. And Ole came in holding all the cards. And they were trying to expand already with to go back and run Ole's old territory, which was Georgia. And then they would run tours up in Ohio, West Virginia, and it was a separate territory. You'd go up there once or twice a month, and then you would run the Georgia towns. And Ole was very familiar with it, so they sent us down and put us in an angle with Manny Fernandez and Thunderbolt Patterson to try to, and they put us on top down there. And I think Dick Slater was the resident booker, or at least carrier of the information at the time. So they were already trying to expand and revive Ole's old territory.
At the meeting, Bischoff actually encouraged wrestlers to call 2 or 3 people they are normally strongly discouraged from talking to. Specifically, he said Wade Keller and Dave Meltzer. About the contents of these meetings where he's burying Flair, because he says he wants his side of the story out, and figuring that under the normal circumstances, if this wasn't a work, he'd just fire Ric Flair. And number 2, and this is a big one, quote, Arn Anderson was in the room when Bischoff was calling Ric Flair a swerve artist, bullshit artist, etc., and he didn't react at all. Then again, taking the other approach, it wasn't Anderson's place in that situation to react, and if he had reacted strongly at the boss burying his best friend in front of everyone, if this wasn't an angle, it probably wouldn't have been an intelligent reaction when it comes to his own long-term employment. Not only that, but if he had reacted in that situation, it would have looked even more like an angle. And then number 3, a private contractual matter between a wrestler and Bischoff has never been anything he's made a big public deal about in the past to wrestlers. And burying a wrestler as marketable and legendary as Flair to other wrestlers to the degree Bischoff did wouldn't make sense, as the reaction was strongly negative across the board towards Bischoff for his diatribe. What do you make of the theory that, hey, this is a work? Did that ever cross your mind? I mean, you were pretty close to the situation, but this was the company that liked to do the quote unquote wink, wink worked shoot, and Bischoff with the whole Pillman thing just a couple years prior. Did you think, this might just all be bullshit?
No, I never looked at it being a work. Again, we're going back to legal. What's legal, what's not. To have that kind of conversation about starving a guy out and starving his family out and all that in front of his peers, I know it's morally wrong. I don't know how. And if you start to get into the nuts and bolts of this contract and all that, I'm pretty sure you can't discuss that with other people. Don't know. Just assuming. Everyone looked at me for a response. I asked the world, how are you going to win that thing? If I go, hey, you're way the fuck out of line, that's too personal. I just said that to my boss. And guess what? A guy that's not even involved in it, that has nothing to do with it, gets fired. Because that's what would have happened. Have no doubt. So, no reaction. It doesn't matter what you feel. It's another class situation of where I just had to keep my mouth shut, bite my lip, turn the other cheek, and just, hey, it was what it was, and how it played out, it was going to play out. I was in a terrible position from a reaction standpoint.
You did a radio appearance in the middle of all this and said, to be perfectly honest with you, this thing has been pretty tight-lipped. The company has its stance and they feel justified legally and I guess morally. Rick has his stance and he feels legally and morally that he's correct. Apparently they've come to a crossroads on contract negotiations, and I don't know if it's length of time on the contract or the numbers, the number of days a year they're requiring Rick to work. I'm not real sure of that. And I think in order to protect me, Rick hasn't told me a lot. I know my loyalty to Rick is as a friend, and that's one thing, but my loyalty to the company is another. I have a job to do, so I pretty much keep my nose out of it. I hope at some point this can be resolved because I think WCW and the world of professional wrestling at large is a better place with Ric Flair in it. Boy, that lines up exactly with what you're saying now, huh?
Well, I had no idea that was even out there. I don't even recall doing that, but that sounds exactly like the way I felt and the way I would say it. It's probably 100% accurate.
About a month after WCW sued Rick did actually file a countersuit in Charlotte on May 18th. And he's trying to get a judge to nullify his contract, which would allow him to join the WWF. And it's pretty well known that Flair could, at this point, return to WCW if he wants to, and the lawsuit would be dropped, but he's hesitant to do so. That's according to Meltzer's report. So it does feel like a month in, Bischoff has maybe cooled down and said, okay, this is stupid. Let's just get back to work. Did you have any idea I guess my question is, does Eric ever come to you and say, okay, listen, Arn, I've tried to not let you be in the middle, but this is all stupid. I want to drop the lawsuit. I want to get Rick back. If you talk to him, I'm not asking you to call him, but if you talk to him, would you let him know that I'm open to a conversation and let's just let bygones be bygones? Or does Eric ever have such a conversation with you?
No, that never occurred. And I just wonder what suddenly, and not being able to pinpoint in my mind what was going on with business at the time. Had we hit a stalling point? Did we need a shot in the ass? And that would have been Ric Flair walking back in the door, I would think, immediately. What would have caused the change of heart with Eric? And unless I could go back in time and have the figures in front of me and what was going on television and what was working and what wasn't working, why he would suddenly have that change of heart, I have no idea.
Something that's come up over the years that I don't know if you'd be privy to, but I can't wait to ask you about, even if you say, I don't know about that. Shane Douglas has said during this time, he was talking to you and you were essentially the middleman and having ECW negotiate with Rick to come in and have a series of matches against Shane. So in theory, ECW would run a show in Charlotte and Rick would win. Then they would run a show in Pittsburgh and Shane would win. And then the third match would take place at the ECW arena and Shane would win. And I find that
to be oddly fascinating that was ever discussed. The idea of not the WWE ECW, but the original ECW, that Flair would have ever even entertained that idea. Did you ever have such a conversation with Shane Douglas about this?
I have no recollection of that conversation happening. Now, could I have run into Shane somewhere? And if Rick was still in limbo, that'd have been a hypothetical conversation after a couple of beers, maybe, if we happened to be in the same place. But I don't remember it. Not to say that it didn't happen. I just have no recollection of it. It seems mighty far-fetched. But, hey, crazier things have happened.
All right, Arn, hygiene in wrestling. Pretty important. You know, it's something that fans have looked at for a long time. Like, hey, why does everybody shave under their armpits? Because it's just nasty not to, especially if you're going to have somebody in a headlock. It's just, you know, common courtesy. Well, the same thing is true at home. This feels like a good place to mention that. Support for Arn is brought to you by Manscaped.com, who by now you know is the best in men's below-the-belt grooming. You see, Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Guys, listen up. Valentine's Day is just around the corner, and you don't want to be that guy with the bush or that nerd who cut his balls trying to get it on. Whether you have a Valentine or not, you need to be prepared to look good down there. You all know somebody who's maybe had a little manscaping accident in the bathroom that like CSI Alabama. Don't bleed out. How about this? Don't use the same trimmer on your sack that you use on your face, you nasty bastard. That's why Manscaped has redesigned the electric trimmer. I can't believe this is real. The Manscaped engineering team spent 18 months perfecting the greatest ball hair trimmer ever created, and they've just released, are you ready for this? The Lawnmower 3.0. That's right, listen up, you motherfuckers. Their third generation trimmer features a cutting edge ceramic blade to prevent manscaping accidents. Millions of balls are about to be nick free thanks to Manscaped's advanced skin safe technology. And when I tell you this is premium, I mean premium. The battery will last up to 90 minutes. Now, I don't know what kind of fucking woolly mammoth you are, but if you can't get the shit done in 90 minutes, you need to see a doctor. Anyway, one of the coolest features is a new LED light, which illuminates the grooming areas for closer, more precise trimming. And who doesn't want to see their sack with an LED light on it? Now, they've also upgraded to a 7,000 RPM motor with quiet stroke technology, which I had to use at my in-laws a few years ago. And let's not forget about the charging stand. Show off your mower loud and proud, because this intelligently designed stand is a rapid charging dock powered by USB. We're going to get your balls up and running faster than ever. Get yourself the best gift of all this Valentine's Day, the Manscaped Lawnmower 3.0. It's really a gift for both you and her, because when there's less hair down there, she might feel like doing something special. Get 20% off plus free shipping when you use the promo code ARN, A-R-N, at Manscaped.com. Always use the right tools for the job. Your balls will thank you. Let's go over that one more time. You get 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code ARN, A-R-N, at Manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at Manscaped.com. Just use the code ARN. Stay sexy this Valentine's Day and manscape your sack meat.
Yeah, we should probably go back and start with the conversation, the initial conversation we had sitting out by the pool with Vince. And he informed us that he definitely wanted us. He made us feel really good about ourselves during that conversation. He had all the facts and figures in his head. And, you know, he said, you guys will bring credibility to my company. And that made us feel good. And he didn't have any wild ideas as far as costuming or any of that. So we felt very good about that. And he said, guys, I don't have guaranteed contracts, but my word is good. And I guarantee you guys will make more than you made with Crockett. And we didn't have anything else to go by. So that's basically what we had to go with. And we came in and we got to wrestle all the top teams, and everything was going good until we kind of checked the figures at the fiscal year. We were about 50 grand behind at about the 8 month mark. We're 50 grand what we had made with Crockett behind. So we asked for a meeting at TV. We went in and we reminded him of the conversation. We also told him where we were financially at that point in the fiscal year. He got this look on his face like he wasn't aware of that. Well, maybe he wasn't. And he said, okay, guys, I remember the conversation, and give me some time to sort through this, and we'll get together at the next set of TVs, which was 3 weeks, as we've discussed, later. So, we went back to work and thinking everything was going to be made right.
So let's talk about that. It is a different era, and I know some of our younger listeners are going to think, what, 3 weeks? But it's not like he could send you an email or send you a text or call you on your cell phone. Your method of communication was a lot different back then. And even if he mailed you a letter at your house, it's not like you were home to get it. So in a weird way, meeting you at TV was just par for course at the time, was it not?
Yeah, that's where any beefs you had, you couldn't resolve them. You didn't want to call the office and bug them up there. That's just one of those things that, if you were one of those guys that called the office, you were stooging or something of that magnitude. It wasn't that you were just calling about your business. It was just, there's a bit of a stigma that was tied to that. So I didn't feel comfortable about that. And if you wanted to get anything resolved, you had to wait. It was like common knowledge. Okay, at TV, get a meeting with Vince. And Vince had a lot of meetings with guys at TV.
So after he promises to sort of square up with you and figure out what's heads or tails, and just assess where you've been, in 3 weeks, you guys go make your loops, and then you and Tully show up to TV and...
Well, I walk in the door with a mile-wide, smile on my face, thinking this guy's, going to cut me a $50,000 check, get us up to where we need to be. We set up a meeting for the day. We go in. Vince is putting on his gym shoes. He's got on his sweats. He's getting ready to go out and go work out. Yeah, come on in, guys. I got time to talk to you right now. And so here's the way it went. He said, check the books, and you're right about that. If you guys will just hang with me, I'll make this right down the road, and we'll get you where you need to be and everything. And yada da 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 and da 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 da. And that's where we came up with the way to make it right is to cut us a check today and get us up to where we need to be, at least at the same pay scale we were on the year before with Crockett. And he got this look on his face, and he says, well, guys, I can't write you each a $50,000 check today. I mean, it's not the way I do business, but you have my word. Well, he had already went back on his word. So we said, if you can't do that, then we'd like to put our notice in. 3 months, which was a lot of time in those days. Nobody gave a 3-month notice because they could just decimate you on television, just crucify you, any number of things. And man, he got a really, really crazy look on his face. Like,
so let me back up a little bit. Would this have been after SummerSlam or before SummerSlam? Probably after, right?
Yeah. It would have been about, I finished up at, let's see, not Survivor Series 89. Yeah. So back that out about 3 months. So that would have been about the time that we gave that notice.
So not too terribly long after SummerSlam, because SummerSlam would have happened at the end of August. So September, October, November, you're probably early September, maybe.
Yeah, and coming off of SummerSlam, we'd had a really good match with the Hearts,
Yeah.
the Hart Foundation, and we beat those guys, which was a big feather in our cap. They put us over, and we were rolling. It's not like they were using us badly and we weren't producing or any of those things. It just mathematically was not adding up.
Let me ask, I know we're getting deep in the weeds on this, but when it's often been said, and this could be bullshit, but we've heard from some other guys, like Scott Hall, for instance, he would say Bret Hart didn't care how much money he made as long as he was the champion, with the idea being that, yes, this is a business, but a lot of the guys really care about their status within the company. And that exists in the real business world too, where some people are more motivated by the title on their business card than the number on their tax return. Did you consider that in between TVs, perhaps, because it sounds like the timeline would be, you would have met with Vince prior to SummerSlam and then the first time, and then you have the follow-up meeting and ask for your notice 3 weeks later after SummerSlam. Did you guys think, well, hey, he must be going to make us whole here. He's putting us over the Hart Foundation on pay-per-view. If he had no intention of squaring up with us, maybe he would beat us. And then if that doesn't happen, did you think in hindsight, hey, maybe he just thought he'd fucking let us win on pay-per-view and we would sort of forget about the money we feel like we're owed?
Well, I think by that point in time, just looking at our past record, and the little tests that he had thrown out, like the Tom McGee matches and things like that, that it wasn't about winning or losing for us. It was about making money. That's, but the bottom line was, if you were the champion, you were going to make more money. The tag champions, on live events made more money than just a team they were building. It was in a different slot. So the two kind of went hand in hand.
Yeah, no, I get it. So, you realize, hey, he's not going to square up with us. This is back more present day here. He's putting his gym shoes on and he says, I can't just write you guys a couple of $50,000 checks. Is Tully the one who says, well, we'd like to give our notice and we'll give you 3 months? Or what does that look like in that moment?
I think Tully was the one that mouthed the words, which, kind of put him in shock. And we had already talked about this, even though going in, we had a positive attitude, he's going to make this right. You're right. The neon sign to me was we would have never beat the Hart Foundation at SummerSlam.
Right.
If he wasn't going to, do right by us. So we went in there, tippy-toeing, thinking, well, okay, today's going to be a good day. And it just kind of gut punched to both of us. But just like we told, Dusty the night that we were leaving, we had our B plan and we were going to stick with it. If he's not going to make it right, we're going to put our notice in today. And during this time, come to find out, after this meeting broke up and we talked to a few people in the next day or next couple days, and everybody's money was down. We didn't know that. And there was no reason for it because business was good. You never knew, and we never found out just why during that particular time everybody's money was down. But when we told him we want to put in our 90-day notice, he looked at us and went, oh, okay, guys, well, do me a favor. Give me another 3 weeks. We didn't say that. He just said, give me till the next TVs to resolve this. I don't want to lose you guys. Okay, we'll do that. And as we got up and started to walk out, he started pulling his tennis shoes off. And I just kind of glanced at him and he went, I can't go to the gym now. So at least he gave us, I think it was general concern that he was going to lose us, because him not going to the gym was a big deal.
Right.
And it was a huge deal because that was something he did every television in the early afternoon. So, we at least knew that we had had some impact. And when we walked out of there, you know how it is. You tell one person, they tell a person, somebody else tells a person. Oh, the Brainbusters put their they put their notice in. You know, there was a little bit of a buzz around.
Right.
Well, you saw the line start to form outside of Vince's office of guys that were disgruntled, come to find out, that wanted to leave. Well, the contract that we had signed with Vince, which everyone had signed, which this is almost so ridiculous, nobody would believe it, but it was for 10 days of $150 a day. That's all he guaranteed you in a year's time.
So $1,500 was your contract value.
Correct.
Okay.
Wasn't worth the paper it was written on, obviously, but you would have to get a lawyer and fight it. And you know how that goes. His pockets are deeper than your pockets and all that. So you were kind of stuck with it. But when that line kind of formed, and I don't even remember who was in that line, but there were some disgruntled people that their money was down too. We heard that he was heard saying, you know, tell those guys I'm not talking to anybody else today, or something like that, that these contracts are legitimate. You can't just break this. You're not just, you know, these guys aren't just going to break their contract, you know. It was something like that, like, you know, I'm going to stop this bleeding right here.
Right.
And we kind of heard that secondhand. So that kind of put us in a situation where, okay, it's either do us right or let us go. 3 weeks later, have another meeting. We walk in, and it's a different look on his face. Okay, guys, I've reviewed all the figures and da-da-da-da-da, and you're right about that. We're going to go ahead and let you turn your notice in, and we'll apply the last 3 weeks towards the 90 days.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we were, at that point, because the money had not came up at all, I started to get excited again. It was like once I made the decision to leave, Jim Crockett Promotions, that night, once I had made that decision and committed, I started to feel good about it because I had thought plenty about it. And with the travel schedule up there being what it was, and being dog tired and fatigued, and talking to a 3-year-old that's crying on the phone, Daddy, when you're going to come home? You've been gone a long time. It was the right decision. So,
let's give some context to that for a minute. You had told me before here on the show that, the travel schedule was just beyond compare, what you were used to with Jim Crockett Promotions. And, you had a wife and a young kid at home, and you were missing a lot of critical stuff because, maybe once upon a time, a lot of the towns you were working were drives, and you were centrally located in Charlotte. Well, now there's no such thing. You're on an airplane every single day, first thing in the morning, first flight out at 5 or 6 a.m. So the quality of life is way, way different. Your money's down and you're missing your family. You're getting pressure from every angle here. Are you not?
I feel like the roof caved in. Add one more thing to that. If you can believe this now, just like it's hard to believe the $1,500 contract we signed.
Right.
Somebody in their office came up with the bright idea that, okay, another way to save money is we will fly these guys out to the first day of their loop, whether that be a 10-day loop, 12-day loop, 5-day loop, whatever it may be, but we'll make them buy their own plane ticket home.
Wait a minute. What now? You have to buy your own air home?
Shake your head. Stick your finger in your ear and ring it out. Yes, you have to buy your own plane ticket home. So I'm going to fly you on this loop, and may end up with you ending up in Calgary, Canada. $700 for back then. Now, this is 88 or 89, whatever the year was, dollars. $700. We ended up one time during this period in Calgary. It cost us $700 to get home.
Well,
not only is that immoral, that could possibly even be illegal. Who knows? But it happened. It's a very real thing. So, what are you supposed to think? My God, you're talking about getting kicked in the ass. If there was a question of if we made the right decision or not, that ought to button it up for you.
And in your old shoot interview from 2 decades ago, you were asked about negotiating with Vince, and you said, quote, "I put out a feeler and he said, absolutely. And something happened in Houston that wasn't to our liking as far as being treatment on television that had nothing to do with winning or losing or who we were wrestling. But there was an incident that I'd rather not go into. I addressed it with Jim Crockett and he didn't handle it properly. So I went and picked up the phone and called Vince McMahon." So what happened in Houston that made you call Vince McMahon?
Okay. On that very same show, we went out and had a hell of a match and a hell of a fight with the Midnight Express. Left the audience just exhausted. And for some reason, they felt, they being the powers that be, that I should go out after that and lose to Steve Williams, Dr. Death, in 4 minutes. Now, I couldn't have beat Steve Williams with a baseball bat and a blowtorch and a dump truck backing over him. Not the point. The point is, Arn Anderson had value with the company. I just went out and proved it a little bit earlier, once again, and that's all they can think to use me for, thinking that Steve Williams, who was Bill Watts' product, was big in that area of the company, in that area of the country, for that matter. Beside the point. It was just almost like it was just done to me in addition to what had been done to Tully, him getting taken off of the plane. I started to get a little paranoid. And then I got a little bit pissed. And then I started to think it through. Okay, sort through your anger. And it had nothing to do with Steve Williams. Like I said, this was a decision made by, who knows. But then I thought, okay, let me just go ask Jimmy. And I asked Jimmy, I said, well, I did what you asked, but why? You think that was the right thing to do? I just did what the booker, I just backed up what the booker said he wanted to do, Arn. And that told me all I needed to know. I already knew I had a job offer in good standing from the other company. When it was over, I went back and told Tully. I said, I'm getting on the phone as soon as we get to one, and I'll get this all resolved. We're out of here.
And Tully's on board?
More than on board.
So you put out this feeler, I assume you're still talking about Barry Darsow at that point, and then Darsow puts a bug in Vince's ear and Vince calls you back and you guys have a conversation, or did you jump on a plane and fly to Stanford?
No, we were told when I got back and called the next day we were going to be in Philly, and we're wrestling the Midnight Express again in Philadelphia, for God's sakes. You know how excited we all six of us were about that, obviously, right?
Sure.
You can just anticipate those people in Philadelphia who are blood and guts. They got 4 guys that are going to go out and give it to them, blood and guts. So that, we were all very, very excited about that. So anyway, I called Darsow. He says, I'll get back in touch with you. We get to Philly, private plane. He says, okay, I just spoke to somebody in the office. Vince wants you to fly to Stanford in the morning. You'll have 2 plane tickets waiting for you at the airport. He'll have a limo pick you up, going to bring you to his house, and he'd like to talk to you guys. So we get up the next morning. We fly to New York. Limo picks us up, takes us to Vince's house. We're out by the pool, and we have our discussion. I'd love, Vince in those days could just have you floating on air. When he talked to you for 5 minutes, you'd just turn and walk off, and you'd feel like you were 3 feet above the ground. he had all your history. He had, all the accomplishments, and really was complimentary. And he asked us what we were going to make, or what we'd been making, excuse me. He said, what have you guys been making? And we told him, and he says, well, we don't have guaranteed contracts with my company. We have opportunity. He said, but I guarantee you guys will make more than you made with Crockett. So don't worry about that. And we took him at his word. And, we agreed on a start date, and we asked him what he wanted us to do about the world tag titles. Did he want us just to turn them in? Or he said, no, what do you think you should do? And I said, well, Bobby Eaton and the Midnight Express are friends of mine, and they're business partners of mine. And I'd like to do the right thing. I'd like to drop the titles to Bobby myself, take the fall on me. So you do what you think is right, Arn. And that's, we got back to Philly, got down to the arena, went in, and we had a talk with Dusty, and I told him that's what I'd like to do, and he said, fine.
Let's pump the brakes right there for a minute. I want to clarify this meeting with Vince and Stanford by the pool. This is happening the morning of the Philadelphia show. The Philadelphia show's at night, right?
Correct.
When you're meeting with Vince by the pool, I know you don't get any specifics about cash, but does he give you any specifics about dates? Because in that era, they were madmen running shows 2 times a day sometimes, and running 2 and 3 crews. Road Warrior is an understatement for what the schedule was back then. Is that discussed at all at that point?
Well, no, he did not go into it at all. And to be honest with you, I said earlier that it was a huge consideration on me staying with Crockett, because I had, it had come through the grapevine. Not only were they making huge money through their marketing and through the houses and all that, they were also running 3 towns a night, and they were working their ass off. And we all knew that. But for the first time in my life, I had been insulted professionally. I felt like I had been used and abused, believe it or not. And you look at it on face value, going out and having a 4-minute match with Dr. Death Steve Williams and getting beat right in the middle of the ring should not be a big deal. Had the timing not been what it was, and the issues not been what they were, and the sovereignty, if that's the correct word, of the company being at stake. Because let me tell you, when Steve Williams beat me, the roof did not come off the place. There was like a look of disbelief in the audience of, well, why the hell did they do that?
Right.
And so I didn't think, when I made that decision to go see Vince the next day, I did not even consider the number of days I would be working, which was probably one of the bigger mistakes I made. But I had to trust my gut on this situation. And at that point in time, I was just pissed and felt disrespected. And I hadn't felt that, if at all, to that degree since I'd been in the business. And if I had, I didn't remember when.
Did you discuss creative with Vince at all? Did he say, I've got some ideas in mind, or what about this, or what about that? Any sort of creative, or does Bobby Heenan even come up at that point?
He did not come up. He just said, I'd like to use y'all as a team. He said, it's not broke. I'm not going to mess with it.
Okay, Arn, we've talked about a lot of no-brainers here on this show, things that maybe we're overthinking, things that, maybe we can armchair quarterback, but something you don't want to mess up, something you don't want to overthink, something you don't want to armchair quarterback. I hate Steven Singer. There's this guy in Philly you've been hearing about, and I've been telling you about his diamonds here on the show for years. If you've ever been to Philadelphia, you've probably seen his billboards. You've heard about it on the radio. I hate Steven Singer. He's been making it too easy to buy gifts for over 4 decades. And now Valentine's Day is here. You're probably thinking, I'll just get her flowers again. But here's the deal. Those flowers are going to die and end up in the trash within a week. Give her a gift that lasts as long as your love. A real 24-karat gold-dipped rose from Steven Singer Jewelers. A real long-stem rose preserved and dipped in pure 24-karat gold. This real rose will last forever, and it comes with a lifetime guarantee. All shipped for free in a beautiful gift box with your own personalized message of love. Now, to be clear, these roses, they'll never wilt or die. They don't need water. and they will remind her each and every day of your love. Now, if this is your first Steven Singer Red Rose, I should tell you it's a classic and it starts at only $59. Go online right now and take a look for yourself at IHateStevenSinger.com. When you get there, click on the roses and may it just become a hero this Valentine's Day. It's that simple. It's IHateStevenSinger.com. Steven Singer Jewelers, one place, one price. One more time, IHateStevenSinger.com. It's a no-brainer. You got to go check this out. It looks like it costs 10 times as much. Be a hero this Valentine's Day at IHateStevenSinger.com. Let's talk about Sting for a minute. When did you first hear about Sting possibly coming in? It feels like it's been a long time coming. You know, Bruce Pritchard has freestyled that he was in conversation with Sting way back when Watts got bought out, that perhaps he could have come over, and what if it was his time back then? Would he have been the guy to replace the Ultimate Warrior in that same spot? Would it have been Hogan and Sting at WrestleMania 6? Of course, we know that didn't happen, but Ric Flair made his way over. The Four Horsemen made their way over. Lots of folks jumped ship from WCW or the NWA at the time to the WWF. And those who didn't, well, they made the jump after the buyout. Guys like Booker T, guys like Diamond Dallas Page. But Sting still marched to the beat of his own drummer. He was on the sidelines and then eventually took a flyer on Impact Wrestling and Dixie Carter and TNA Wrestling. And he was there for a long, long time. And it felt like he was never going to make it to the WWF. And he finally does here. Did you try to bend his ear over the years and try to pitch it? Or was this the first time it comes up that you know of? What can you tell us about Sting and coming into the company after all that time?
Well, he and I didn't have that kind of relationship. We were friends when we saw each other. I had nothing but respect for him as a person and as a businessman. I wouldn't have felt comfortable calling and trying to coax him to come to work. I felt like he was loyal to WCW, and if he would have came with the buyout, it would have made that package obviously a lot bigger and a lot more impressive, because there were a lot of guys who chose not to come at that particular time and came at different times, like you said earlier. Sting was pretty much in control of his own destiny for the entire time he was with WCW. He was the lead guy. He was the go-to guy. He was the figurehead. He was the face of the company. He pretty much called his own shots, and the guy made several fortunes, and he was able to have a different path other than coming to the WWE at that particular time. I think he would have just been a superstar in the room with a lot of other big superstars. When you got The Undertaker and Kane and Steve Austin and Rock and Shawn Michaels and Triple H and all these guys standing around the room, you're not the guy. Now, I don't know if that concerned him or if that was even an issue that he even thought about, or I don't know what the thought process was. I just know that you can wait too long and you could still have your moment in time. Would have been a lot bigger if when he did get his moment, which was the match with Triple H at WrestleMania, would have been nice if he prevailed. But it is what it is.
Let's talk a little bit about the rumor and innuendo. Sting has said for years that he never came to the WWE because he wasn't sure they would use him right. And he says he once heard that The Rock asked Booker T who he used to be, and that made Sting not want to come in. When he actually does come in, Meltzer would write, for years, there was an easy answer to the trivia question of who was the biggest name in North American wrestling to never step foot in a WWE ring. The answer was Sting. And at the 2014 Survivor Series, Sting, at the age of 55, took his name off the list. For years, this seemed like something that would never happen. And after how his contemporaries from WCW, whether it's Lex Luger, the Steiner Brothers, or the Road Warriors, went to the WWF and had very little good to say. In fact, they all came back with negative stories. Sting was always guaranteed one of the top spots in WCW and top money. It really made no sense to go. And in 2001, when WCW folded, Sting was 42 at the time, and he figured his career was over, and things have come full circle. A decade earlier, Sting and Luger would talk about how Ric Flair was past 40 and should retire, and now he was the same age. He did little wrestling for several years. He'd made his money. He'd gotten heavily into religion. He was raising his kids, and he became quote unquote real estate Steve at Gold's Gyms in Southern California, where most of the semi-celebrity clientele didn't even know he used to be a famous pro wrestler. Then TNA and Spike TV called, offering him roughly $500,000 a year per year, where he would work a very limited schedule, television and pay-per-views when needed, and he could help jumpstart the promotion. As we mentioned, he was a big addition to the video game here. He'd been doing a lot of promotional appearances, and just as they had done with the Ultimate Warrior, when he was a big part of the video game, it led to him coming in. For years and years, a lot of people thought the dream match was going to be Sting and The Undertaker at WrestleMania. As you alluded to earlier, it wound up being a loss to Triple H. And I think most people assume that Triple H was going to lose that night, since this was Sting's big WrestleMania moment. Maybe those folks weren't really paying attention all those years, though. Anybody who was knew that Triple H was going to win. So we'll talk about the WrestleMania match another time, I'm sure. Lots of controversy to go around.
Things needed to look a lot grimmer than what they looked, and have Sting come down and be that Sting that I remember. And that Sting kicked everybody's ass. I know he kicked all 4 of ours plus JJ. It just didn't have enough for me. It didn't have enough explosion, pizzazz, whatever you want to call it, excitement, over the top, Sting splashing everybody, Sting clotheslining all the guys out over the top, all that good stuff that you would want to see in about a 1-minute segment of action. I just think the 3-minute stare down and all that, that's great. You want to see Sting come down and make a difference right away. And I think you have a dip. It didn't rumble to the point that rumbling overrode the fact that you weren't getting any action right away.
Let's talk about the next match. You're in this one. We've got the Powers of Pain and the Rockers and the Young Stallions and the Hart Foundation, and they're going to be taking on, also the British Bulldogs. God damn, there's a lot of tag teams here. They're taking on Demolition, the Rougeaus, the Conquistadors, the Bolsheviks, and the Brainbusters. And Meltzer would say this was a really great match with guys tagging in and out and going all out. And it was the pace of a hot Japanese match until the last few minutes. And he even says in his write-up, Blanchard and Anderson were the highlight of the match, particularly their first meetings with other famous tag teams like the Bulldogs, Bret Hart, and the Rockers. It comes down to Bulldogs and Powers of Pain versus Conquistadors and Demolition. Ultimately, it's written here. Then Arn signaled it was time to go home and finish all the fun. So the Rockers and Brainbusters went at it to start the feud, and both were disqualified at 27 minutes and 57 seconds and had a light-hearted brawl back to the dressing room. So this is where you get your feud kicked off, but he's very, very complimentary of your work here. You got a ton of time, like 33 minutes here in the match. No, my apologies. 42 minutes in this match, I think is right. 3 3/4 stars. Big time match, but God, this has got to be challenging when you've got 10 guys on the apron to this side and 10 guys on the apron at that side. And then obviously 2 dudes in the middle. So there's 18 dudes on the apron. That's got to be challenging to work around, is it not?
It's the screaming shits. And let me tell you why. And for the 18 years that I was a producer, I asked periodically, not every year, but every few years, this was the one thing, if you think about it, you got to go, well, I'll be damned. Do you know how stupid you feel where you got this match going on and you got the whole theory of Survivor Series is when the match is over, the way you win the match is you still have members of your team surviving, and there are no members of the other team left, correct?
Right.
That's the theme of Survivor Series. The thing I could never get past that made no sense to me is you would have a finish go down right in front of 4 guys who were standing there 3 feet away and nobody made a save. What sense does that make?
Right.
You would never want one of your teammates to get beat because that lessens your odds of being the sole survivor or a survivor with all your teammates or half of them or whatever. It was just one of those things that I could never get an answer to. When I would ask, they would look at me and I would get that look like, oh shit, he's trying to make sense out of an unsensible business again. But when it was all said and done, if it didn't make sense to me, and I would try to go back and analyze every match I was in, okay, it wasn't a 4-star match, but did it at least make sense? Maybe it was a 4-star match, but did it still make sense? Was it a 2-star match? Did it make sense? As long as it did, okay. With those guys, I remember vaguely what we actually did, but with all those talented guys with the Hearts and the Bulldogs and all those great baby faces, man, we could just go in and tear the joint down. And I'm sure we did. We got with those guys during the day and say, hey, man, we want to feature everybody if we possibly can. That's what we tried to do. The fact that we bailed out with the Rockers, fighting to the back just kind of takes away from the action in the ring. So it was just one of the, they could have beaten us that night. That would have been fine. Just let us do something once we get to the back. Maybe when the match is over, you cut to the back and we're kicking their ass in the back or something. We didn't have to do a fight all the way down we had been beaten quite a bit, trust us. Getting beat one more time by those guys wouldn't have hurt us.
Your first time working with Bret Hart's got to be here, right? You wouldn't have ran across him before.
No.
What'd you think? Obviously we'll talk about Neidhart another time, but Bret Hart in particular, known for being one of the all-time best in-ring technicians. Was that your testimony here in early '88?
Very solid. Bret was a wrestler's wrestler. He, he was very talented, and he wasn't a flip-flop and fly guy. Bret liked to mix it up and swap holes and all that stuff, and made everything credible and believable. I enjoyed working with Bret.
What about the Bulldogs? We've often heard as wrestling fans that Dynamite Kid was a special talent. Whenever I suggest that to Bruce Pritchard, he says, I never really got it. But Bruce was never in the ring with him. You were. What say you?
Well, the thing was, even though he was gassed up and jacked up and looked tremendous, he still wasn't a big guy. I put him in that category with Chris Benoit. You would look at him and go, that's a good looking athlete, but he's not 6'3", he's not 280 pounds. How's he going to fare with these bigger guys? Once the match got started and he started laying into you, nobody questioned how big he was. They were a really good team, and they didn't work like body guys. And, when it was time to get after it, those guys would take some bumps and they would give you some bumps, and they would, they were very accommodating as far as working hard. So we enjoyed working with them. I would have loved to work with them a program.
Let's talk about some of your tag team partners here. The Conquistadors, the Bolsheviks, the Rougeaus. Tell me about those teams as best you can.
Ah, well, those, I didn't pay that much attention. We were put out there together there was really, which I guess is part of the allure to it at that time, was just to put a bunch of random teams together. We didn't try to do anything in conjunction with those guys, and they certainly didn't try to do anything in conjunction with us. It was just do their thing and get out. And when it was time to get put out, they got put out.
How do you find out it's time? Is somebody giving you a signal? Is the referee communicating with someone ringside and they tell you, or I know you're weird about communicating some of this, so you can tell me to shut the fuck up whenever you're ready. But this seems like a giant cluster when you got 20 dudes here, and it's almost akin to a battle royal, the way you said it. Well, it's time for you to go out. But if you're in the middle of the shit, how do you keep up with that?
Well, it's up to you. You know when you're going out and who's putting you out. And that's really everything else. You're just calling on the fly and making it You know, if you don't talk to guys during the day, then you get in there, end up in the ring with them. In those days, heels ran the match, period. It was up to you. If you had a great match in those days, agent would come up to you or whoever it was, and they would go, "You guys had a great match. Thank you." If the match stunk, the heel got his ass chewed out. It was on him. So you would try to, you know, make sense of what, let's just say we were going to put out whoever, whatever team you want to pick, the Bulldogs. Okay, how can we get them as high as we can possibly get them, and how can we use our teamwork to screw those guys? Because you just didn't want to, I just wanted a spine buster, Davey Boy Smith. My God, and count him 1 down, 1, 2, 3. Right. There's no heat in that. And people would just look at, you know, even though I did do that to Sean in one of these same matches, which he was pissed about. I think it might have been the very next year in our last pay-per-view there, or mine. But that's for another day, another story. That was what you would get. You're out third, be put out by the Conquistadors, let's just say, whatever it was. It's up to you guys to put it together.
I'm saying as far as the time cue, though, like when do you know when it's been, I mean, obviously they've got to back time the show and they want the show to go off the air at the same time. I don't think this is the IFB era. Is there someone at ringside on a headset who puts a pencil in his mouth or tugs his tie or something silly like that?
Somebody would get word to the, somebody on a headset would get word to the referee somehow.
Yeah.
Okay. It's so-and-so's time to go. He would just come over and, hey, time to get out. And you would take a minute or so to adjust whatever you had to do. If you were on the apron and it was your turn to go out, you'd just start screaming at whoever, you know, make it real. Hey, give him to me. And the guy would know, okay, it must be his time to get out. And he would tag out and you come in, do your finish.
Of course, you're working with all the top talent during this title reign. Dusty, Ron Garvin, Manny Fernandez, Magnum, Sam Houston, Don Kernoodle, Jimmy Valiant, everybody in the territory. You're also in the Crockett Cup in 86. This time you're with Tully. You're going to lose in the second round of the Fantastics. Ultimately, you wind up losing your television title on September 9th, 1986 in Columbia, South Carolina. And who better to lose it to after 248 days than the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. It's kind of fun to think about now that you're his son's coach, but he beat you to end your first television title reign. What was it like working with Dusty here in 86?
Well, he was such a huge star and he was so over. He was so charismatic. Just going after my championship elevated me. And the fact that he beat me elevated me. Rolling out of that ring after wrestling Dusty Rhodes for however length of time it was, 10, 15 minutes, and getting beat right in the middle was better than beating 25 other guys that were just middle of the road. I mean, he was the star, the top guy. He was the American Dream. And for him to want that championship, come after me and take that championship, in my mind, it just elevated me, and it also gave me fodder for promos and going forward, a chance to start plotting on how to get it back. So it gave me all kind of ammo.
Let's talk about your next win. You win this one from the Great Muta in 1990. So after you lose the television title to Dusty in 86, a lot happens, of course. You even leave the company, go work for the World Wrestling Federation. But then when you come back, very quickly, you're put against the Great Muta. It's January 2nd, 1990 here in Gainesville, Georgia. It airs on the Power Hour. What's your thinking about the television title here to get it back so quickly? You know, obviously maybe the original plan was you were going to be with Tully and things were going to look a little differently. And even though the money may be different, you've got to feel pretty good about being put right back into the title picture, getting a win over the Great Muta.
Well, yeah, I walked back into that angle with Buzz Sawyer, Muta, Dragon Master, Gary Hart. And I was wrestling those guys in 6-mans and tags and individually. Uh, the television champion was Muta. I don't think Muta was going out every single week and having a 20-minute match. I don't know the history before me, actually. But I do know that there had been so much water under the bridge, and there was so many shenanigans that went on during my separation between Crockett and WCW that when I got a chance to wrestle for that TV title, and Muta, I've watched it back a couple of times, and he gave me a good match, and I think he worked very hard, and he did things the right way, and I think at the time those guys were being used well enough. I mean, anytime you had a match with Buzz Sawyer, you were in a bar fight. There's no other way around it. It was you earned your money that day. So beating Muta for that title kind of put me back into a prominent position and a position to be on TV every week and let everyone know. You can't just assume everyone knows you're back from the WWF. Everybody don't watch every week. Things escape, information escapes people. They miss a week or two, and God, when did he come back? But having that television title and being in a feature match every week, which I loved, I knew what it was going to do for me long term. I didn't know this far ahead we would be sitting here having the conversation about it, but it's one of those things that worked and it lasted and it gave me a chance to do, what I want to do, and that's just wrestle. Forget the politics and all the BS and all the social climate. I just wanted to wrestle, and that's what it provided me.
Let's talk about how the television title maybe changed from the Crockett era to now the WCW era. Back in '86, when you win the belt the first time, are you getting a bigger payoff as a result of being the television champion? Are you featured more prominently as far as placement on the card or the posters? Is there more expected of you from a promotional aspect, or did anything change?
No, I think it helps your positioning, and back in the day, it was where you were positioned on the card, how much you made. And there was also those underlying situations of where was I 2 weeks ago? What were my contributions? Okay, now I'm on third from the last, let's just say. Does the reaction, does it match how much the house was up week to week? From a couple of weeks ago. Now you're in the next to last match. You're in a TV title. Your opponent is bigger. It was based, your payoff was pretty much based on where you were on the card, but sometimes, you could be a little lower on the card if the plans were for you a lot bigger than the guy that was after you. They just, for positioning reasons, had it backwards. You still made whatever the payoff guy had in mind for where you were going, not necessarily where you were on that night. But the next night, you could have been on last. It could have been me and Dusty somewhere for the television title on last. It just, your payoffs were commensurate with basically what their plans had for you.
Well, you guys are masters on the mic, both you and Rick, and these are two very, very memorable promos. But now it's time for the match. When you come through the curtain, fresh after having had an upset stomach and tossed your cookies a little bit, does that settle you down? Do you feel like once you got that out of your system, you were okay? And when you walk in front of the crowd, is it like riding a bicycle again, or are you still nervous on your way to the ring?
A little nervous till he chopped me the first time. And that woke me up. That put me back in fight mode. And it got my thinking straightened out. And we went from there. It was just instinct, and you go to grab a hold and I'll counter it, and I'll try to grab a hold and you counter it, and we'll do some fighting in the middle and we'll see where it goes.
Talk to me a little bit about the crowd that night. It's in Asheville. Do you have any friends or family in the crowd to come out and watch?
No, sir. Did not. It was just Rick and I and the audience.
You guys go 22 minutes and 37 seconds. Meltzer would write, most of the underneath wrestlers were sitting together, faces and heels were at least kept separate. Watching this, trying to get over the importance of the match, the psychology was excellent. They did a lot of the normal Flair or Anderson routine with slight cross-ups, as in getting the story that they each knew each other's moves, but the other was one step ahead recognizing it. And it turned into a very good match with near falls going back and forth. Neither really came across as a face or a heel. Anderson was selling his knee big from long figure four sequences. When Pillman came to ringside, Pillman punches Flair, who punches him back, and as Flair turns his back, Pillman gives him an enziguri with a cowboy boot to set up their Nitro match the next night, and a staggered Flair falls into Arn Anderson's DDT for the pin. 3.5 stars. So pretty good review here. Lots of storytelling. Maybe not exactly what fans would have hoped for, in that there is a little bit of outside interference, but that's standard Horseman fare at the time, so it does keep that story alive. Tell me a little bit about when you knew you were going to win and what the finish was, and were you yourself sort of shocked that I'm about to beat Ric Flair on pay-per-view here?
Well, it was shocking, and when I did hear what we were going to do, I looked at that and I went, okay, let's turn this around. Let's just say if Pillman came down and he screwed me on behalf of Rick to gain some favor because he was the lead horseman and he wanted in, that would have made sense. So us going this route and reversing it and him helping me win would have made sense. And if you're the guy that's getting screwed, being the fact that we made no bones about it, there was always 3 or 4 or 5 of us on a guy, and, we would gang up on a guy. That way we were sure to not getting hurt. If you can cream a guy without getting hurt, you got no risk. That's a pretty good proposition. So from a storytelling aspect, it absolutely worked. Now, there might have been some folks that were disappointed that it wasn't a clean finish, but I don't think a clean finish would have helped anybody. I don't think if I just made a comeback and DDT'd Ric Flair, anybody would have swallowed it. Probably not. So I think it worked in that respect, and if you're the outside guy looking in, that's how the Horseman would have did it. If is 4 stars the top rating for Meltzer?
5.
5. Okay. I was hoping he didn't give us that close to the top score, because my lack of skills, I'm sure, made that a lot less exciting than it should have been. And trust me, I've always been the first one to say, I don't do much. I can't do much. I just try to make the few things that I do, I try to do them well, and I try to put them in a spot where they're impactful. And but as far as being a flashy performer, certainly with Rick doing the upside down bump and the strutting and all his stuff that he does, I am in no way, shape, or form an opponent for him in that department. So I'm glad that it was 3.5. If 5 is the top, I'm still very flattered that I got that kind of rating. Thank you, Meltzer. Appreciate it. And that's that.
Tell me about the way the match was received afterwards. When you hear the bell, you come back through the curtain. Are you relieved? Did it live up to your expectations? Was Rick happy? What do you remember about post-match?
Yeah, I think everybody was happy with it. It was a surprise ending. I don't think anybody in the building saw that coming, and it still had a little bit of a screw job. Well, it had a lot of a screw job to it, so it didn't hurt Rick in any fashion. And the fact that I could claim, even if there would have been a stack of pianos fell out of the ceiling on top of Rick, for me to be able to cover him and get the win. That's one of the things you can hang your hat on for the rest of your career. 10 years from then, you would look in the record books and you would go, okay, Arn Anderson wins over Ric Flair. They're not going to have that 10 pianos fell out of the top of the ceiling and that was the circumstances around it. And it's something as a heel, you would go back to and bring it up 10 years later. It's like beating Hulk Hogan twice, 2 weeks in a row. It doesn't matter that you shot him with a spear gun and backed over him with a dump truck and took out a chainsaw and cut off 2 of his ankles where he couldn't stand up and then threw some powder in his face and covered it. 1, 2, 3. The fact that you had beaten him twice in a row as a heel, if you really are a heel and you're not trying to be cool and you're not trying to get over like a babyface would, you would hang your hat on that. And that's what I did with Rick, and that helped our story.
Final angle on the show saw Big Show holding Edge's head in place on top of Rollins' briefcase, with Rollins threatening to curb stomp him. And Rollins said this would make him a paraplegic. And he's a husband and a father now. And then Cena came out and Rollins told him he's useless unless he allowed the authority back. And they teased the curb stomp, but then Cena says they could come back. Rollins says he's going to curb stomp him anyway. That leads to Cena hitting the ring and cleaning house. Edge gets away and Rollins curb stomps Cena. So an interesting scenario here, but the gist is, hey, it's WrestleMania season. We got to have John Cena back and we need somebody to hate on. So what's Stephanie and Triple H doing? Is that basically the gist?
Well, you describing that whole scenario by using the word interesting is interesting to me. I might have used another adjective, but anytime you go on TV and you lay a stipulation out there, your word should be good, right?
Yeah.
When you double back on it, doesn't it put a little bit of a rough edge on your credibility?
Yeah. I mean, I can't argue that at all.
Or is it me? Is it just me?
I think wrestling folks have always just given a pass and they just say, well, it's wrestling. But I mean, if the steps don't matter, then we shouldn't care about future steps. That's certainly the precedent that we've set with our audience.
Yeah, and I guess my problem is, Conrad, just to be honest with you, is I'm not sitting here a know-it-all and a really intelligent, articulate master of the business. I'm just a wrestling fan, just like everybody out there. And when you say something from a company standard, this is not just some talent out there getting themselves over or getting heat on themselves or developing credibility or saying something that's going to be good. When you say it as a company, you should probably stand behind it and probably make your word good. Because I'll just skip ahead to right now. What this year would make you want to watch the draft?
You mean the NFL draft?
Nope.
Oh,
the WWE draft.
I didn't have anything that made me want to watch the draft this year.
Because my point is on steps, what I saw last year was, okay, you're going to be traded here. You're going to be traded here. You're here. You're here. You're there. You're here. Oh, but by the way, we're going to have a special stipulation. What was it called?
Yeah.
Where you can just hop show to show.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I guess my point is, you build up to this big draft. All this talent go to SmackDown. It's the only place you can see them. All these go to Raw. That's the only place you can see them. And if you're stuck to that, you would help develop your brands. You would see what your loyalty is. You would see which one they prefer. But with, Roman Reigns hopping back and forth, yeah, he's a big star. And yeah, they want to see him on both shows, but why have a draft?
Right.
So doubling back to the steps and all this stuff, it just, it was just part of a hot-shotting campaign. And I know the company was trying to jog business and all those things, but I don't know. I just believe your word should be good on some stuff.
It's, the word I used was interesting, but we're back to John Cena as the top guy and the savior of the company. And we're back to Stephanie and Triple H as the top heel act. Do you think we have, we've sort of milked both of those cows dry at this point?
They were great in that capacity. They really were, and they got a lot of heat, and there's no bigger heel on earth than Stephanie McMahon. She's great in that role. Hunter was good in that role, yes, but it had been stretched out, and it was, go to that well so many times. The new was off of it, the bloom was off of the rose, and it just, it was just going back to the same hold a couple of too many times, especially because when they are in that power position, there's nothing you can really do to them that makes sense anyway.
Right.
So agreed, yes. Going back to that same hold was a little too much.
Do you remember any sort of like wrestling nugget or information or something you carried with you for the rest of your career that Watts maybe gave you, maybe a piece of psychology or a rule of thumb or anything like that? Because I think sometimes Bill Watts gets, for better or worse, right or wrong, he would be criticized for not being, I don't know, we'll say a little rough around the edges, but did he ever give you anything that you were like, oh shit, that makes sense. I'm going to carry that with me?
He never spoke to me. That's the nugget that I took with me. I worked for him for 5 months, and he never said a word to me until he told me I was leaving in 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, there you go. Well, that makes sense. That adds up.
However, the one nugget, before I forget it, because it's very important if you look at the way I've conducted myself the rest of my career. As I was leaving, and Teddy was still there, obviously, he could have been there for 10 years if he'd wanted to be. That's how over he was. He said, now listen, I helped you. You're going to run across, if this pans out for you, and I believe you're going to be around for a long time. He says, you're about to figure this out. He said, there's going to be a young kid that's going to need your help. You're going to look at him and go, you know what? He's got something. I want you, since I did it for you, if you think that kid truly deserves the help, I want you to pull him aside and help him get to the next level. That's all the thank you that I'll ever need. And it just so happens, both of his kids came along, and I was in a position to help them. And that's one of those deja vus that really feels good.
Man, what a small world wrestling is. I didn't even think about the fact that you worked with them, but absolutely. Talk to me about Matt Bourne. You mentioned, that he was one of your early tag team partners, and, we sort of reminded everybody that he was the Doink character, but way back when, Matt Bourne was a wrestler and a half, but he had some interesting lifestyle habits. Any fun or interesting Matt Bourne stories you can share with us?
Well, let's just say that Matt was very accomplished by the time I became his partner. I don't think Matt really ever felt like I had enough experience or was ready for the position that I was put in, being his partner when we went to Georgia Championship Wrestling. I know that there was some underlying animosity, and I don't know if it was just Matt had animosity towards the world or if it was just me or what the situation was. Matt and I did get into one of the few scrapes that I got in during my 37 years in the business.
Really?
Yeah, not well known, and I don't take any pride in it whatsoever. There's nothing worse than the boys getting into a fight, because it immediately separates the locker room, cuts it right in half. His friends, your friends, neutral folks, and it just makes for a very bad element. Plus, you got to go out there and trust that guy a lot of times, with your body. And if you don't believe that you can do that, it puts a big damper on what's going on. But Matt liked to party, and I'm not saying anything about that. Hey, I've drank a few beers myself. That's for damn sure, over the course of the last 37 years. So, but Matt went out, had a good time one night, and I woke up, and guess it was Paul Ellering, myself, and Matt. The three of us were healing a room. So we had two beds and jerked a mattress off in those days, you called it healing a room, jerked the mattress off the bed and flip a coin, and somebody got the box springs, and which was the rotten of the three choices, and then somebody got the mattress on the floor and somebody got a full bed. It was just luck of the draw. But I woke up and Matt was standing there straddling me with some choice words as I cut the light on. And so all I remember hearing is, "I wish I could piss on you." Well, I'm not a tough guy, but I've never been scared. And at that point in time, you imagine a little rage in there with it. It was on. And Matt and I got in a pretty good scuffle there. I was lucky enough to get the advantage. Matt said, "That's enough." I got up, went down the hall. By then, there was enough noise, I guess, it had brought a couple of the boys out in the hall. Larry Zbyszko, God bless him, said, "Well, Arn, what's going on down there?" I said, "Well, I just got into a nice little scuffle with Matt. Really don't feel comfortable trying to sleep in that room. I'm going to get another room." He said, "Well, I've got a second bed." I said, "If you don't mind, I'll take it." So I took it, and the next day, called the room, asked Matt if it was cool to go down there, just like it never happened. No animosity going forward, never had another cross word. It's just one of those things, I guess, that had to happen.
Well, let's lighten the mood a little bit here, Arn. Let's talk about some fun stuff, some ribs, some locker room stories. You got anything funny you can share with us from back in the day?
Oh, let's see. One of the things that I felt was, I thought was pretty damn amusing, if you know the characters or if you just look at it on face value. When we were in Pensacola, there was a guy named Rick McGraw, God bless him, who has since passed, but came to work down there he was there probably 4 months. And he had the bright idea that he wasn't going to get a hotel or an apartment. And so upon reflection of that, I went, well, where's the guy going to stay? Turned out he would go work the town, drive back to Pensacola, go to the 2001 or one of the watering holes that the boys frequented in those days. And then he would immediately go to the beach, get out his lounge chair, set his cooler beside him, throw a towel out, and sleep whatever was left of the night until the sun came up, which woke him up. He would walk about 50 feet to the bathhouse, take a shower, put on a coat of oil, and good for the day.
Yeah.
One thing missing. What about home? You don't have a home. But, I asked him about that. He said, "Hey, once that sun's up, it's all gravy." So there you go.
Yeah. How about washing the gear? I mean, that had to be a stinky motherfucker not too long after that, huh?
You would be surprised at the guys that would get to the arena, wash out their tights in the sink, wring them out in a towel, put them on, good to go. I would suggest without a roof over your head, washing your tights would be the last thing on your schedule.
Yeah, probably. Kevin Nash has talked about this a lot, obviously, in the 20-something years since this has happened. And he said that losing you from wrestling hurt. And he said that a lot of fans didn't realize how good you were on so many levels. And he said it took about an hour and a half to get dressed up for this parody. And as you mentioned, he said it was his idea. Other folks say it was Terry Taylor's idea. Did you ever have a conversation with Kevin Nash or Terry Taylor about this parody and whose idea it was and how it came to be? Or what can you tell us about that?
Well, I went to Nash's room after we got back from the arena because I wanted to ask him if it was a personal attack, if I had heat with him, if this was, if this was his way to send to me not Arn Anderson, but Marty Lundy, a message, you know, and Kevin looked me in the eye and he said, no, we're just trying to get heat. We're working here. And I believe him. I mean, if Kevin Nash has an issue with anybody, me included, I'm sure he would just address it directly and man to man, and that was it. But I had to ask because it was so personal in the attack I felt. It wasn't anything standard wrestling. It wasn't maybe that's why it lasted the test of time. There was so overboard. But I went to his room. Did I have a few beers in my hand? Yes, I did. You know, again, I'm never going to say, well, I never drank anything. I didn't drink a dozen beers every night after working out during the day and wrestling at night and have a dozen cold beers. Well, of course I did. There was probably a couple of nights I had 2 dozen. Not the point. The point is, don't bring it into the workplace. And I didn't, and they shouldn't have. But it is what it is. So I did have that conversation with Kevin, offered him a couple of the beers, which I think he took. And so I left it behind that day. When we finished our conversation, I put it behind me. I moved on. That was the end of it. And, you know, if we weren't doing this podcast, it probably wouldn't have entered my mind one way or the other, and hasn't for years.
Nash has said that you guys knew what was going to happen beforehand, and it wasn't until the wives got involved and they said that you were made to look like, quote, a bunch of boobs, that there was an issue. And he said that apparently Aaron told you that Nash made you look like a stupid fucking drunk, and that the only heat that existed was residual heat from the wives. And he says that the cooler was yours. And when you confronted him later at the hotel and asked, as he said, with quote, with like 5 beers in his hands, Kevin, why'd you do that? He looked down at your hands and just got in the elevator, and you told the story that you went to his room. So whether it's getting in an elevator or the room or whatever, still, Nash feels sort of indicated that, hey, we were just doing art imitating life, but no heat after you guys talked that day. Did you ever have a conversation with Terry Taylor about it at all?
It came up before I even knew it was Terry's idea. I don't know when it came up, but it was years later. And I mean, a decade later, maybe. We were sitting around a room. I don't know if it was WrestleMania or, you know what I think it was? It was like when WrestleMania was in Orlando at the stadium, and Terry was working down for NXT. And those guys came over, obviously, to the show, and we're all sitting around a trailer, and that came up. Somehow, I don't know how that came up. Terry looked across the room at me and went, he used to call me Reverend, because I guess I'd start preaching or whatever the deal was. Preaching, being bitching, I imagine. But he said, yeah, sorry about that, Reverend. That was my bad. And I don't remember what my response even was to him, but I knew what he was talking about. I knew it was his idea then. And, you know, it was a half-ass apology, you know. He would have been one of the guys, first and foremost, back there slapping each other and high-fiving, you know, the NWO when it was over. So it was what it was. My wife was insulted. More than me, because I got a lot thicker skin. She's a regular human being and a pretty damn good one, to be honest with you. She's got a kind heart. She also knows this business is entertainment business. She, like me, just couldn't figure out that if they want to get heat on me, is that the only thing they're going to do? You know, is that all they got to use, you know, as a tool? And, it is what it is. It'll be up to the test of time. You know, fans will tell you that's the one thing I love about wrestling fans. they'll tell you when they love something, and if they love that, they'll go, "Why are you getting so emotional, Arn? You were a badass. You did some rotten things. You broke some people's legs. You broke some people's arms. 5 of you guys would scrub some guy's face in the cement. What are you getting upset for?" Yeah, those were all wrestling angles, and they were all designed to have that babyface kick your ass when it was time, and it was all meant to draw money. This just looked like a Saturday night off the wall skit just to bury a bunch of guys, because maybe some of those guys, not even me, had heat with other members of that group, if you read between the lines.
Well, let's talk about that. Kevin Nash, obviously a political player backstage in that era of WCW. Scott Hall, more of the same. Ric Flair had been on again, off again booker for years. Lots of guys, right or wrong, had said that Flair was hogging up the spotlight for himself, and you had defended that with your life at times. Do you assume that maybe some of this was their way to sort of get a dig at Flair, as let's go after his best friend, and this real moment that they had, let's try to ridicule that and reduce it?
Well, it seems a little bit ironic that they featured me on when they were scooping all the dirt out and dropping it on all of us. It's like I got about 25 more shovelfuls than anybody else, but if they want to go back and really be cute about it and defend it, and they're going to say, well, yeah, but it was your retirement speech that started all this. That's what we were making fun of. Okay. If you want to go that route, that's fine. It's, I guess, throughout history, and I just, it's something I accepted a long time ago. Rick and I were friends for a long time. We were best friends for a long time. Rick opened doors for me, but I think I paid off, every single time that he suggested me for a role. It didn't come across as him taking care of his friend, because I was able to carry the mail and I was able to get it done, and whatever he needed done or suggested me for, well, I pulled it off, and I pulled my own weight. I think Rick was on top for so long and had so much power in the business with the office over the, long time, which bled well into the WCW days, and I think a lot of people held that against him. A lot of people, got tired of Rick being in that top spot. A lot of young guys, I guess, felt cheated because he was in that top spot for so long. And was it a way to get to him through me? Absolutely.
No doubt that Arn's off to a great start. There'll be plenty more every Tuesday right here on Westwood One, where you can also find my podcast with Conrad called What Happened When. It's available on Wednesdays. Wait, that's tomorrow. Has anyone seen Conrad? What the? For Arn Anderson and Conrad Thompson, I'm Tony Schiavone.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.